Welcome back, college football fanatics. It's College Football with Sam, and today I am going to give you 5 reasons why I believe the USC Trojans will beat the Michigan Wolverines on the road in USC's first ever Big Ten conference game, a historic matchup tomorrow, Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 12:30 p.m. Pacific Time. Before we get to that, though, I want you guys to do a few things for me. Number one, I want you to go to the pinned comment at the top of the comment section, and if you haven't already, check out my USC versus Michigan preview and prediction, where I got to be transparent. I picked USC to win 27-26 in a close affair because I trust Lincoln Riley and his staff more than Sharon Moore and his staff. And also check out my video where I give 5 reasons why I believe that Michigan will win this game. For these big games, it was the same with Nebraska versus Illinois, which I think is going to be a big, fun, intriguing game. Again, a top 25 Big Ten matchup. I like to view things from all the angles and give as much analysis and commentary as possible. And there are reasons why Michigan will win this game. There are also reasons, as we'll discuss today, why USC will win this game. We'll just have to see what the result is on Saturday. And lastly, I want you, again, you watching right now, hi, to like the video, to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, share this video around to other college football fanatics, whether USC fans, Michigan fans, or college football fans in general who are fanatics about the sport, who are passionate and very invested. We want those people to join this community. College Football with Sam prides itself on being the best Big Ten football channel on YouTube, and we're trying to be the best college football channel on YouTube. And liking the video, subscribing to the channel, clicking that notification bell helps you to get notified when we release new content, helps us to get into the algorithm, get more viewers and subscribers, and just helps create a positive cycle of growth, which will help you, help me, and more than just us. So thank you very much. If you want to support the channel in an additional way, you can check out the Patreon page via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment, where I have my picks for all Week 4 games that involve Power 4 teams. Sign up as an All-American or Heisman member to access those. But without further ado, let's get into it. And reason number one why USC will beat the Michigan Wolverines is their elite and balanced receiver group. I originally was going to say just wide receivers, like originally, because USC has some pretty damn good wide receivers that they put out on the field, whether it's Zachariah Branch, who is just a very fun and enjoyable player to watch, so athletic, so shifty. It's just a freak athlete, and he has great coaching, awesome coaching at USC. Dennis Simmons, USC's wide receivers coach, is one of the best in the business. So Zachariah Branch, Makai Lemon, who is also a blue chipper out of high school, and then you have Jacoby Lane and others on the roster. They're fortunate. They're blessed to have Dennis Simmons as their position coach, to have Lincoln Riley as their head coach and also de facto offensive coordinator and play caller. USC's receivers are awesome, but their leading receiver on the season is not a wide receiver. It's Lake McCree, who I did not even view personally in the preseason as even close to being one of the Big Ten's best tight ends. I don't know if he is. We'll have to see. But right now, he has 137 receiving yards on 9 receptions, no receiving touchdowns. USC on the season has 673 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, no interceptions. They do have 7 rushing touchdowns, but they have, again, double the passing yards, more than double the passing yards they do rushing yards, and USC has 18 more pass attempts than run attempts. Typically, Lincoln Riley offenses are at their best when they run the football more. Lincoln Riley does not like to deviate away from the run. But against Michigan this Saturday, the Trojans are going up against a defense that is much better at stopping the run than it is stopping the pass. Michigan has better depth at defensive line than they do at defensive back and linebacker. And USC has a good tight end. They have elite wide receivers who, again, have combined for nearly 700 receiving yards. They've made insane catches. They have very good speed, and they have diversity at the position. For example, Jacoby Lane is a big-bodied wide receiver. He's huge. He's long, big catch radius, 6'4", 195 pounds. You obviously have Zachariah Branch, who's an awesome return specialist, but also an incredible wide receiver. Zachariah Branch is 5'10", 175, very light, but similar in a way to Devonta Smith, where you're light and you're not the biggest player, but my goodness, you get open, you're quick, and if you're in the right circumstances, you can be a Heisman winner. USC is that type of talent at receiver, and that's a big reason why they'll win this game, because they're playing against a Michigan secondary that, outside of Will Johnson, has not done a good job at covering receivers, not just Texas receivers. And Texas has one of the best, potentially the best, wide receiver room in all of college football. But they've struggled to cover Fresno State's wide receivers. In the first and final two series of the game, Michigan's starters in the first series and depth pieces in the final two series struggle to cover Arkansas State's wide receivers. So going up against an elite USC receiver core, also a solid tight end in Lake McCree, and a quarterback in Miller Moss who is experienced, who is being coached and developed by Lincoln Riley, and who is in a Riley system that has proven year over year over year to be very reliable, I have a hard time seeing Michigan stopping that passing offense. Michigan's best hope against USC's receivers and quarterback is to allow them to pass for probably around 250, 300 yards, but not allow any explosive plays, and hope that their offense functions. And hope isn't really a strategy. It isn't. As I've covered in my 5 reasons why Michigan will win video, I think Michigan could run very well on USC's defense, and I think there are reasons and evidence to back that up. But we're not talking about Michigan's rushing offense. We're talking about their passing defense. And their passing defense so far has looked more like a weakness than a strength, and it's matching up against one of the strongest passing offenses in the country because of USC's elite development, talent, athleticism, and toughness at the receiver position. Reason number 2 why USC will beat Michigan is Miller Moss. The reason, if you want to group small reasons together why USC will win this game, it's their passing offense. That is the ultimate non-negotiable that puts USC in a good position to win. That's why they're favored on the road, in the big house, in a 100,000 capacity stadium, where Michigan's only loss suffered at home since 2020 was to the current number 1 team in the country in Texas, who is both bigger and faster than USC, and more efficient and also more talented. But USC is favored by currently 5 points because of their passing offense and the mismatch that provides, and the fact that, look, they beat a ranked LSU team. Now, how did they beat a ranked LSU team? Well, their receivers making great catches, their defense playing a very good bend but don't break strategy, and taking advantage of some of LSU's boneheaded decisions. But perhaps most importantly was Miller Moss, who is delivering these throws that are just in the breadbasket, accurate and confident while under pressure, and while his rushing offense was inconsistent. Moss on the season is 48 of 66 for 607 yards. He's completing over 72% of his throws. He's averaging around 9 yards per pass attempt, and he has 2 passing touchdowns with a passer rating of 160. He's been sacked twice, not all that much. He did a good job getting the ball out when he was under pressure, fairly often against LSU, which is where he suffered said 2 sacks. He currently has a QBR of 73.9, which is 33rd nationally. It's the lowest QBR for a Lincoln Riley quarterback, I think, probably since Spencer Rattler. I know that we're only through 2 games, but through 2 games against LSU and Utah State, who don't even have close to elite defenses, his QBR has not been in the 80s or 90s. So that's an indication that maybe he is not an elite quarterback. I don't know. I would give him benefit of the doubt that he is, given that he's in Riley's system. I would say right now he's probably the best quarterback in the Big Ten. Dylan Gabriel could be that. Drew Aller could be that. I mean, I think based off of body of work, I almost forgot about Aller. It'd be either Miller Moss or Drew Aller. But Lincoln Riley has a knack for quarterbacks and developing them, and I would give him benefit of the doubt there over James Franklin, for example. Though Andy Kotelnicki, I think, is the nation's best offensive coordinator, but I don't want to get too sidetracked. Stay on topic with USC. Miller Moss will deliver throws under pressure. If Michigan is able to get through USC's offensive line, which I detailed in my 5 reasons why Michigan will win video, I think Michigan has a trench advantage over USC. I think they'll be able to get pressure on Miller Moss. But that may not matter because the good quarterbacks, the great quarterbacks, and Miller Moss is one of them, they deliver good throws under pressure. They make plays when their supporting cast does not put them in a perfect position, in a perfect situation. You saw that against LSU already. We all did. Watching on TV, where I said in a brief pregame when I was live, a few minutes before USC and LSU kicked off, that while I thought LSU was the better team than USC at the time, I thought that USC would win because they were more confident in their identity, and they were more able and prepared and willing to rely on their quarterback and their passing offense than LSU was. Going from Caleb Williams to Miller Moss, just looking at their style of play was going to be a much smoother and simpler transition than going from Jaden Daniels to Garrett Nussmeier. Garrett Nussmeier is like the NFL passer build from over a decade ago. He has almost no mobility. He's kind of a statue back there. Really good at throwing the ball, but not elite, and he doesn't have much mobility. Miller Moss is similar to Nussmeier, I think, in a lot of ways, but Caleb Williams was not nearly as mobile as Jaden Daniels. Not even close. So that adjustment was going to be more seamless for USC than LSU. And Miller Moss throughout that game looked like the more comfortable quarterback in a system that trusted him more than LSU trusted Nussmeier, but he made some very impressive throws, like NFL-level throws. Throws where only his receivers could catch it, whether one-on-one or wide open and reading the defense properly. He's a great quarterback. And great quarterbacks with elite wide receiver rooms will take advantage of secondaries that do have holes. So that's reason number 2 why I think USC will win this game. Reason number 3 is D'Anton Lynn, the Albert Einstein of defensive coordinators, though that may be reserved for Phil Parker. But I've been very impressed with what Lynn has done at USC. The Trojans are top 50 in points allowed per game, points per play allowed, and yards per game allowed. They're actually top 25 in points allowed per game and points per play allowed. They're just not top 50 they're not top 25 in yards per game allowed. And they're outside of the top 50 in rushing yards per game allowed. So you look at, like, I can bring up the numbers actually right now. You look at the Trojans defense, and last year they were outside the top 100 in basically every statistical category, whether that was points per play allowed, points allowed per game, rushing yards, passing yards, yards per play, you name it. I mean, USC's defense was just awful under Alex Grinch. Absolutely awful. Through 2 games against a Utah State team who, yes, is horrific, but also against an LSU team who, while I don't think they're great, they may not even be good, they're certainly above average. And they do have a really good offensive line and good receivers. You look at USC's defense, they're only allowing, currently, 10 points per game, and opponents have to score about 30 yards in order to get a point off of them. That's what opponent yards per point is. USC's 8th there. They only allow 0.171 points per play, which is top 20. And you look at their total defense, they allow 305 yards per game, which is 40th. and they allow 5.2 opponent yards per play, which is 59th. You look at their rushing defense, they allow 4.2 yards per carry, which is 65th. Those numbers are not great. And in terms of yardage, it's not even good. It's just average, probably below average, if not perhaps bad for a Power 4 school. But, as I said in the preseason, Alex Grinch's defense was so horrific, that to put up simply top 100, top 75 numbers would be impressive, because you are inheriting garbage. And what D'Anton Lynn has done is he has taken garbage and he has potentially turned it into treasure. They say one man's trash is another man's treasure. That is the embodiment of this defense right here. Lynn has taken, in part because of the portal, but SC did not get everything they wanted from the portal. They did not. Some portal additions combined with some returning starters, and he's made a defense that, look, they've exceeded my expectations already. They held LSU to far less points than I thought they were going to. I thought USC versus LSU was going to be a game in the upper 30s, lower 40s. Honestly, where LSU would score in the 30s, USC would probably score in the lower 40s, and they would win. Instead, USC's offense, and part of it was probably LSU's defense as well, didn't score as many points as I thought they would. Didn't look quite as efficient, but the defense stepped up, got a 4th down stop in the red zone. They sealed the game with an interception at the end, made some key stops, looked much more physical up front. This defense is not elite. It's not even great. It's not near elite. At best, it's going to be good, and even I question whether it will be that. And don't hate me for it. Don't hate me for it. Because you cannot fix what is trash in 1 year. That's impossible. This is not a one-man sport. This is a sport with over 100 players on the roster, and around half of them, give or take, being on defense. And for 2 years, they were developed by someone who didn't know how to call a defensive game, and by very poor assistants who were all fired or let go after last year. But Lynn is a genius. He knows what to do with the talent that he has. And Michigan's offense is not like Ohio State's. It's not like Oregon's. It's not like Penn State's. All of those offenses would probably hang a lot of points on USC's current defense. USC did such a good job against LSU because LSU did not figure out their RB1. They had an overrated interior offensive line, and they have a quarterback in Nussmeier who, relative to today's college football game, is one-dimensional. He can't really run. So he's limited, and he's not an elite passer. USC is facing a Michigan offense that cannot pass the football so far. I mean, maybe Alex Orji can, but that's a big if. So what D'Anton Lynn will probably do is just stack the box and dare Michigan to pass. And that is a very good strategy. And unlike last season, where Michigan probably could have ran on USC for over 400 yards and never passed, Michigan not only doesn't necessarily have the personnel to do that on the offensive line, though they very well may, but they've struggled in the first 3 games occasionally. USC has gained a lot of weight on the defensive line. They're much better at tackling, and they have a genius schemer. So USC may actually have an advantage with their defense over Michigan's offense, depending on what happens on Saturday. And that's a big reason, adding on to USC's advantage in the passing game, to pick the Trojans to win. Reason number 4, very brief, very small, but critical, is the Trojans' athletic special teams. Zachariah Branch has game-changing speed and agility. I don't need to say much else. Zachariah Branch has returned punts for touchdowns. He has returned, I do believe, kickoffs for touchdowns. He had 2 receiving touchdowns last year as a receiver on 320 yards. He had a rushing touchdown in 2023. He returned in 2023 16 punts for 332 yards and a touchdown. And on kickoffs, he had 24 attempts for 442 yards and a touchdown. He is an absolute gamer, game changer. Great speed, great agility, And on top of all of that, USC does have a competent kicker and also a competent punter. Right now, Michael Lance is 4 of 5 on field goals, 3 of 3 from 20 to 29, 1 of 1 from 30 to 39. But he's 4 of 5 on field goals so far, and I'm not going to say that he's terrible because he did shank one in an intense week 1 game against LSU. We'll see how he does. In 2023 with Georgia Southern, he had a long of 48 and made 82% of his field goals. So I'm fairly confident that he is a competent, good kicker, combining that with Zachariah Branch's returns, the fact that this USC team is more physical than last year, which means that tackling improvement is going to translate to special teams, means that this special teams unit is dynamic. They have good speed, good agility, and good playmakers who can score points, touchdowns, and also kick threes, make field goals and extra points. And finally, superior coaching and scheming. As Paul Chryst put at Big Ten Media Days once, and I'm just paraphrasing here, the story of football is to score more points than your opponent. It's just that simple. And how do you do that? You have superior coaching. You do a better job of putting your players in a position to win than the opposing staff. And that has really been what USC's done all season. That is why this team's better than last year, by the way. Returning production and talent and recruiting and all the things outside of coaching that indicate, and by coaching I mean development, not just scheming, all the things outside of coaching that typically indicate if a team improves or regresses from the prior year, returning production, returning starters, usage of the portal now, all of that would indicate USC would actually be a worse team than last year. They're downgrading at quarterback. Their receivers do not have the same seniority. They lost some players on the offensive line. They lost their 2 best running backs from last year. They, on defense, lost some key players. They did bring in some key players, but they also lost some, and they didn't get everyone they wanted on the defensive line to transfer in. But because Lincoln Riley hired a top 5 defensive staff, and he retained, again, like Dennis Simmons, and he's still an elite play caller, Riley is. And all these things, he also did make changes with strength and conditioning. Him and Benny Wiley made changes, decided they needed to bulk up more, prioritize more power along with keeping that athleticism. USC has made a turn for the better. And I said in the preseason of 2024 that I thought, regardless of how USC would do this year, that because of the changes they would make, or they had made, that in 2025 and beyond, they'd probably be a Big Ten and national championship contender close to every year if the hires that were made and the changes that were made were going to be effective. And I thought that the odds said that they were going to be effective. And I think already they've proven to be effective. I don't know how USC will finish at the end of the season. I don't. In the preseason, I also said that I didn't have a read on USC football, and I really don't, because I think that South Carolina isn't good. They nearly beat LSU. They nearly shut them out in the first half. LSU allowed tons of passing yards to Nichols. Like, I don't think that win over LSU is a marquee win. I think it's just proof that Lincoln Riley isn't an idiot, which I think everyone with a competent mind and who's watched the games would know that, hey, Lincoln Riley isn't an idiot. That's my read on the whole LSU game. So the reason, to get back to it all, why I think USC will win this game, reason number 5, is superior coaching. Riley's a really good head coach with a really good offensive staff and one of the nation's best defensive staffs. The only thing stopping USC with the staff that they have from being a top 5 team right now is the damage that the previous defensive staff did. And I don't know if USC's offensive line coaching or strength and conditioning overall is elite. I would trend toward no, but they do have a genius offensive play caller and a genius defensive coordinator. Basically, a genius OC and DC, and legendary assistant defensive coaches, that automatically gives them better staff than over 90% of college football teams. So putting that staff against a Michigan staff that's looked way in over its head, against a coach in Sharon Moore who's only been a head coach for less than a year, and against a Michigan roster that lost even more over the 2024 preseason than USC did. And USC, just objectively through 3 weeks, has looked like the better prepared team and the team that knows its identity more intimately. You got to give USC an advantage there. And at the end of the day, fourth quarter, close game, the better coaching staff's going to pull it out. And right now, that's USC football. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment your thoughts on this video down below. Thanks to Crash2488 and Brasco Rascal for being Heisman members and sponsoring this video and channel. Thanks to Chris Lane, Connor Little OH, Ismar Tyler 9, Chilton Cush for being All-American members. And thanks to John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, and Janisha Cockrell for being All-Conference members. The link to my Patreon page and my merchandise store are in the description and down below in the pinned comment. Have a great day, guys. Go Trojans, and go Blue.